Hey, Michelle, are you ready for some farm to school action? Let's do this.
Welcome to the Farm to School podcast, where you'll hear cows, chickens, and lots of stories of how you thrive and farmers prosper when we learn how to grow, cook, and eat delicious, nutritious local foods in schools across the country
and the world. Hi, everybody. We're your hosts. I'm Rick Sherman.
And I'm Michelle Markison, and we are Farm to School coordinators in the state of Oregon. But we are talking about farm to school all over the United States and the world. And one of the interesting things is that, the first school garden, as far as we can tell, was in 1891 in the U.S. Think about that.
Where was that at? Do we know?
God, no.
I know Portland had one in 1900, right? We had a couple up there. But yeah, Montevilla neighborhood.
And you'll put show notes, right? Because I know you've done presentations on
I have a really
history of school gardens in Oregon.
So how does this fit into today's guest?
Okay, so this is really exciting. Big picture thinking. The interest in and funding for farm to school garden-esque things have ebbed and flowed over the years since the late 1800s. And so, we had our big peak. Remember, we met with Rose Hayden Smith earlier. She's an earlier podcast episode we had. And she really documented the United States School Garden Army and
history
the birth of this. Yes. And then it was 1946 when we had our first school lunch.
Okay.
So think about that. It's not even been 100 years.
No.
So, that was kind of the first wave. I'm making all this up. And then the interest in funding for decreased until the 60s, 70s, Rachel Carlson. And there was a lot more interest in it because of environmental education.
Okay.
It is an obvious way to get kids out into the nature during the school day and have that. And again, kind of interest in funding decreased. But, 1996 was about the time when it was the first farm to school, what we call the third wave. And that is marked by a number of different things, but it was the first time and why we are seeing this huge trajectory and growth now, because it's the coming together of doing these programs and activities for education, health and wellness, the environment, and the economy. Mm-hmm. And when you have all those different threads coming together, you really can go further together. And one of the people who was pivotal at this time of the third wave is our very special guest today, Alice Waters.
School-supported agriculture. I say that instead of farm to school.
Tell me about that. Why is that?
Why? Because it's really school to farm. The farms are the ones that are feeding us and the farmer. And I want that person to be celebrated. We did that at Chez Panisse when we first started to buy directly from Bob Kennard. And we put his name on the menu. And we put Mas Masimoto and its peaches on the menu. And people would come in and say, when are Mas Masimoto's peaches coming? And they learned the names of the farmers, and we bought directly from them. That's what's important from my point of view, is all the money goes to the farmers, the ranchers, the people who grow the food, produce it.
So do you think renaming it school-supported agriculture versus farm to school, is it operationally different, or is it a rebuild?
It's probably for some. They call it farm to school in California for Jen Newsom's program is farm to school. But this is an idea that I had after all the wonderful farmers markets that have popped up in this country in the last 2 years. And those are community supported agriculture. And so I thought if this could be school supported agriculture, people could understand that this is really your local people. And it's meaningful because the farmer's first. And the farmer is first.
Where the food comes from. Well, there's so many amazing things happening around the world, while we also have a lot of noise and headwinds. And I know you have a very loud megaphone, and I'm just wondering what your advice is for others who may not have such a loud microphone or megaphone available to them in their own community.
Well, I just know from Chez Panisse, which is in its 53rd year, is that it's very important for the farmer to bring the food to Chez Panisse and take back all the compost to the farm so that he can farm organic regeneratively and pull down what's up there and put it in the ground where it belongs. And so I have tried to think of how we could address climate and health and values, all of them, most effectively. And we know already that people around the world care about food and farmers and education. And we can't do anything in this country that wouldn't be global, because that's the only way we'll be able to make change. And it's also the way that we're going to be able to use what everybody has known for so long around the world, whether it's about seeds, whether it's about regenerative ag, whether it's something to do with the distribution of food. But I know that Slow Food is very interested in this, and I know that King Charles is very interested in this. I was just there with them in England.
Oh, wow.
And it was because, I mean, sadly, it wasn't an event around school-supported agriculture, but they are so serious about it and informed in so many ways that we are not informed yet.
Interesting. We just literally, 2 days ago or last week, we interviewed a lady, Jenny Devine, who was I think she's the manager for the Farmers Union in England. And they were talking about their farm to school program in England. And very interesting to us. In some ways, America has been, in the forefront and has a lot of things that we've done in the past, and they might be considered behind us, but other ways they're ahead of us in other ways. But it was really interesting getting that perspective from overseas.
Yes, indeed. Well, I wrote a book called We Are What We Eat. Mm-hmm. What I wanted to know was how we lost all of our values in such a short period of time. Because I grew up in the 40s and my parents had a victory garden and on and on. It wasn't until the 50s and fast food was introduced, and it, went viral on our internets, and we spread it around the world. I mean, that's how the slow food movement came into being. They were trying to put a McDonald's in at the Spanish Steps in Rome. Thank God Carlo Trini prevailed. But it's something that I think that people really, really care about. Yeah. And of course, and that we have lost, I think, our values because we lost our connection to the people who grow our food. I never ate anything when I grew up in New Jersey that wasn't right there from New Jersey. And when tomatoes were gone, I cried. But, it's what I learned when I went to France in 1965. Mm-hmm. And they were eating in that slow food way. And I said, why is it so delicious? And it's because it was just picked and it was brought to the restaurant in season exactly at that moment.
I think I might have an answer for you.
Yeah.
In terms of like why we lost our values, and I'd like your thoughts on
Yeah.
this. My parents grew up in the Depression, and I think it could be argued that like when the women of America went to the workforce and they came home after a long days of work, and they didn't really want to cook, like and from scratch and everything. And my mom, I remember only eating mashed potatoes. I had the exact opposite experience than you did. I only had mashed potatoes from a box, and I didn't know any different. And I thought potatoes were terrible until my wife said, "Oh my gosh, you don't make them from scratch from real potatoes, and you boil them and you mash them, and they're so much more wonderful." But my mom was really interested in convenience, and just like, oh my goodness, I don't have to cook so much. And so I think we lost that in one generation from that.
Oh, I think we did. We were losing it in the 30s for sure because of the Depression and people's need to work and all of that.
Yeah.
But the people who had victory gardens during the war, I think they got those values back. And my parents were and Carlton Frederick was on the radio, and my mother listened to him, and I had to have brown bread sandwiches. but I just know that everybody on the planet basically did not import food from any place else except coffee, tea, and spices before 1950. And that's really when things changed significantly, because we were, getting cheaper avocados from Mexico, but they were picked when they weren't ripe, and they never get ripe. They get soft. Mm-hmm. And that may be an avocado to some people, but it's not to me. I want that great taste. And I guess I really know that this works because of Chez Panisse. We've been doing it really very seriously for 45 years. And I just became, my farmers are my best friends, put their names on the menu. That really, really helped. But I know from the Edible Schoolyard Project, which I've had for 30 years, with teenagers, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, 800 of them, that when they grow it and when they cook it, they all eat it. I mean, I'm not even talking, I am talking about taste, but it's the process of them engaged. And when they're cooking it, it's theirs, and they all eat it. And to see these teenagers eating this, cooking this, is thrilling to me. I know it works. And so I just feel like this is our best way to bring the values of sharing. It's our democracy. Would you like this or that? And would you like to taste this? And you're handing plates across the table, and you're really thinking about other people.
And Alice, talking about the Edible Schoolyard, I first met you over 20 years ago. And I think about how much has changed since then. And I'm wondering what advice you have for us, even just here in Oregon. So since that time, we now have 20%, 22% of all the food schools purchase are locally produced.
I know. I was just up in Portland, and I was blown away. And I went to schools and went to farms that were providing schools with food. And it was really so heartwarming for me and so hopeful to meet everyone involved in that work. 7,500 schools around the world that have come from one school in Berkeley.
That's amazing.
I mean, we started them, we started 6 schools around the country to make sure that it worked in all different climates and all different cultures. So we had one in New Orleans, one in LA, one in North Carolina, one in the Bronx, one in upstate New York. And I'm just so happy to say that they all worked. And so they helped to spread the word around the world. But every year we do a training at the end of the year. And people come and then they take that home. And that's how it got to 7,500.
Amazing. Yeah. So we actually in Oregon have about 800 school gardens in almost half the schools in our state. And I just think I still get the sense that we're not done. There's more.
You aren't done.
Yeah. So what, and as part of our statewide team, there's always this sense of unsatisfaction because just when we get close to the goal line, we're about to make a goal, we move the goalpost. And so how will we know we're successful and that we've arrived? What do you think the vision according to you?
Well, I think the actual school lunch that is served with students sitting down to eat is really the ultimate proof of concept, where that food is purchased locally and organically and all of that, but that it is part of the school day to sit down and eat together. For me, that's the proof of concept. I went to a slow food. I went to Florida in Miami. Do you know how many school gardens they have? 300 in Miami. And I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. I mean, no one has told me about that before I was invited to speak. And I went there just a couple months ago. And I was so impressed. I mean, one of the main people that supplies the school is a regenerative gardener with a huge greenhouse. So we can stay open all year long. It's like Elliot Coleman up in Maine. Just they are growing all of the food for the schools. And it just was so inspiring, really. And it was something else that's inspiring that you'll love is that the mayor of Paris, do you know about her?
No.
She decided about a year ago that she was only going to have regenerative organic food within 250 miles of Paris. And in 1 year, they're 2/3 to getting it done. And that's a little bit the Chez Panisse story, because once we put out the word that we would buy the food at the real cost, what we pay, we'll buy the food straight from your farm. And of course, that's a huge amount of money that they get that's extra. And so they all want to come to you. We made a map of California. I don't know whether I have the map someplace here. I know I do. And it showed about 150 farms and ranches and all that wanted to sell to us in the early days. And they were willing to, go, a couple hours to get it to us. It was really amazing.
That's amazing.
But I know that the key to it is not only honoring the farmers in every way we can, whether it's names on the menu or just a thank you, big time. It's really this getting the real cost for the food, not having somebody take a piece for delivery. And I think the most important thing for Chez Panisse is getting to know those people who know so much. I mean, we only thought there were 5 colors of radicchio, but it turns out there are 15. I mean, that we get now, and I'm sure there are more than that.
The moment, it's Radicchio's moment at the time of this recording.
Radicchio.
Radicchio and cider. That's what's going on here in the Pacific Northwest.
So Alice, one thing Michelle and I were discussing before when we were doing research on you and Edible Schoolyard and looking at your journey, you have so many. We will for sure put in notes in our show notes section about your books, your children's books, your different podcasts you've been on. If you could go back in a time machine to when this all started, when the Farm to School movement, would you do anything different if you had a magic wand? I'm sure there's lots of life lessons in there, but maybe they were essential. Would you do anything different?
I think the only disappointment that I really have was I had an opportunity at Martin Luther King to design a cafeteria that could accommodate all the kids sitting down. And when they told me that they could not change the system, that I had to have somebody who was superintendent of schools, that's the only way that they could make that dispensation, even though the principal totally wanted us, totally. And his vision, I mean, it could never have happened without him. And we had our 30th anniversary, and he came and spoke with the new principal of King. I hope they have recorded that and I can send it to you. But practically everybody in the room was in tears because Neil didn't know when he made that very radical decision to say, Alice, you do your Montessori thing here, whatever you want to do. And I couldn't believe he was letting me, use the garden as a classroom to teach the academic subjects. But it's really Montessori, my training in 1968 in England, that changed my whole understanding about how we get information into our brains. Because she, back in the 1880s, she wondered why children who were living in hunger and poverty could not learn. I know you know about this, but right now we are having absolutely a sensorially deprived world. And that is really the basic issue. I wanted them in the garden so that they learn to smell and see beautiful trees and taste. And it was the senses that I was trying to open up. And Neil didn't know about that really, but he was willing to believe because he had such a difficult group of kids that came from 22 different backgrounds, which really, I didn't know that would be a huge benefit to us, but it was and is. And so to hear those two principals standing at Chez Panisse and telling all of our funders, this is what I did, and this is the new principal, and he wants to do the same. It was very moving. And I just know that when you're sensorily deprived as an adult or as a child, that you're just not looking in the right places. You're jumping in your car instead of walking. You're not thinking about nature. You're not thinking about the beauty you could have in your house on your plate. You're in a whole, other world. And I think that's really where all of our, what's happened in this country right now is because of sensory deprivation. That we're unhappy. We're not engaged with each other in that very important way, which is, of course, at the table. And we're not teaching our children really anything about it because we don't know, And it's incredibly sad. That's why I'm so focused on the schools. There's no other way that we can really communicate in that Montessori way, except in school.
So to bring the school-supported agriculture vision to life, what's like a menu of options and actions we could take?
Well, I think you have to have, the superintendents of schools to be enlightened about this, and whether it comes from the governor of the state. Certainly Gavin Newsom and Jen Newsom have always been big supporters. Their kids go to Montessori school, and they have always talked about this. But I think there needs to be a lot more than talking. There needs to be a demonstration of this. I mean, and it can't come on video. It's got to come in person. I mean, there's going to be a big slow food event in California, and I hope we can do the students' piece of that, have an edible schoolyard for people to come in. But again, it's seeing is believing. Mm-hmm. And I know that we have to give. Well, I've thought it always had to come from the governor of the state, or, of course, I had great fantasies that it could come from the federal government. Truly, I really thought that Biden has had a great opportunity he didn't take advantage of. But he was there with Kamala, and I know she knew all about it. She's been to the edible schoolyard, and she knows. And she shops at the farmer's market every week. We did also a big event in DC at the Smithsonian. Do you know about that? Well, it happened in I think I have it. Yes, I do have one of the posters. We called it Climate Food Hope.
Great.
I wanted to see the farmers and the teachers because who was it? The president during the Depression, Truman. And he said, they are our most valuable citizens. And so I wanted to do it on the wall, and I wanted to have, 500 teachers, 500 farmers, but, it takes a year to get on the wall. And I had about 4 months. But the Smithsonian said we could do it in their room, and we could only have 100. But it was a really amazing event. We had President Drake from the University of California, and Michael Pollitt, and Eric Schlosser, and Raj Patel, and all of my heroes were there. And plus the young girl who grew oranges and wanted to be a farmer. And she was so unhappy because she couldn't sell it all at the farmer's market. And then she went over to the public school, and the principal said, "These are the most delicious oranges. I'll buy them all." And so I just know that if that could happen, that's the ideal situation. Is we want to support the people who are taking care of the land in the right way, and please come to us and we will pay this amount of money. I think if the word got out.
Absolutely.
And I'm writing a cookbook. It's called The School Lunch Revolution.
Oh, wow.
And it's coming out in fall.
Okay.
And it's everything in it fits into the USDA reimbursement.
Okay. That's
So
my question.
I know that we can feed children a diverse group of things that can be made all across the country and the kids like. So my criteria was them liking it. It was diverse enough. It fit into it could be grown. It could be, canned. It could be ultimately school lunch.
Well, that's great. Thank you. That's been a really needed resource. That's been a big question. Can you eat locally on the USDA meal pattern?
Well,
Deliciously.
the important thing is, of course, our beans. Well, I know, even though I didn't love beans, during the course of doing this book, I fell in love with beans. So they can be every color of the rainbow. You could have them every day. And kids love beans, especially when they have spices and things in them. And you can go Mexican, you can go Chinese, you can go, it's just a very versatile, nutritious vegetable. And we have many like that. All the colors of rices, whole grain rices. I mean, that's the biodiversity of this world is unbelievable. So when we run short of ideas, we can just get them from Japan. And all kids love to roll them up, roll their own sushi, make that. And it's really a thrill to see these kids. I have a couple of films that I have an Institute for Edible Education and Regenerative Ag. And we have been training people in schools. And Jennifer Sherman took a few videos, and they're so charming to see the kids at the table all passing things and eating everything that's there. It's like I don't know. I was so surprised by it. I said, Jen, this is the most valuable film. Nobody believes that children love to eat together and passing and talking. It's great.
Together and harvest together. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, we really appreciate all the time that you've spent with us. And do you have more questions?
If you have any other questions, my time is, I feel, unlimited for this. Again, a pledge to children and farmers is teach students the values of nourishment, stewardship, and community. Nurture our network of 6,500 plus edible schoolyard programs that use kitchen and garden classrooms and support local regenerative farmers. So when I heard you were doing this, I said, absolutely. But I was in Oregon, and I was with farmers, and they're all coming down here this next week, and we're going to have a meeting at the edible schoolyard and coming to the restaurant. But I feel like what the spirit of what is happening in Oregon is definitely in the avant-garde of the states in this country. I mean, yes, Maine and Vermont are doing a lot, but not with the same politics that are in Oregon.
Well, I don't think I've ever had a chance to tell you this, but a lot of that is related to my connection with you. Thank you.
Well,
When if you recall, and our listeners wouldn't know this, but when I was a doctoral student at Tufts University in the year 2000, only two other people had done doctoral level research on school gardens. The name Farm to School wasn't even around very much then. But one of the reasons was because there wasn't a framework for, in research, we talk about, how and why things happen. There was no hypothesis to test. It was like the research roadmap didn't exist.
mm-hmm.
And so Alice, if you recall, like Zenobia,
Of course, Zenobia Barlow.
Janet Brown, yes, Zenobia Barlow, Janet Brown, Dan Desmond, Alice Waters, me,
Exactly.
a whole team. We met once a week for like 6 weeks, and I spent 5 years, and I mapped out. There was no Googling up anything at that time. I literally went to the UC archives and looked through every journal even related to food, garden, agricultural based education and school nutrition. And every time someone said, we did this, we put that in program activities. And they said, and this is what happened, whether they hypothesized it or there was a quote. And those were our outcomes. And we sifted and sorted and sifted and sorted and came up with a fancy term, polytheoretical model for food and garden-based education. But essentially, it laid out the theoretical framework that we then tested with interviews at the Luther Burbank Middle School in San Francisco. Yeah. We interviewed thousands of people and students and educators and all the specialists that we have brought together around the table, which always makes the difference. That's our democracy in action. And then that was the framework, I came to Oregon with. And then when we wrote the policy, we were able to be inclusive. Some states, even California, they have procurement funds for their state grants at the moment. And they're trying to figure out, we know this because we were on the call, figure out how to get funding for school gardens now. But right in the beginning, we we put
But the most important thing right now, from my point of view,
what is it?
I mean, it's wonderful to have school gardens and all of that. But we need to change the procurement. We need to put the government money to the people who are taking care of the land and addressing climate and health and democracy, I dare say, but particularly climate. And I don't know whether you know that the Bank of America has funds for addressing climate before 2030. Guess how much they have? I mean, to loan and whatever.
How much?
Yes.
$3 billion.
How about 1.6 trillion?
Oh my
God. I thought it was
1.6 trillion.
That's amazing. I have no idea what you're talking about. That sounds
I went and did a presentation during Climate Week with a climate guy from the state of California to talk to them. They were very interested. I want the University of California to take it on, because if they did, they could make the map for the country, for the world. Because they've got all the campuses, they've got 364,000 acres of land that's owned. And I'm just trying to figure out how to really have them understand knowing what you all are doing in Portland and in Oregon right now and around the country would be extremely valuable to them as well. But they're right. They're getting a new president of UC, but they just got a very enlightened new chancellor at Berkeley. And I'm just hoping he wants to take it on.
Well, if you need partners in Oregon, we have our new Center for Resilient Agriculture and Food Systems at Oregon State University. And we're an intermix of across extension and university programs that work on really innovative transdisciplinary work that doesn't really fit. Everyone wants change, but the reality is institutions exist for a reason, right? It's democracy moving slow. But it's hard to fit really innovative work into particular places, really for logistical things. People have position descriptions they can't act outside of.
Well, that's where we have to just give some victory garden dispensations. You can put victory gardens anywhere to feature yourselves. We need that kind of message from the powers that be. The president, oh, do you want to grow food for the University of California? Okay, yeah. You can do it. If you do it organically and regeneratively, go ahead, grow it.
Yeah,
but we're in that time where it's an emergency. It's not have time to think about it. I mean, we've thought about it. And our kids are all sick because of it, and now we've lost our democracy. So we need to do something very, a big demonstration. I was in Berkeley in the 60s, which is probably why I'm where I am right now, because I was so empowered by it. I've never felt that way, ever. When you walk into the plaza and there are thousands of people listening to Mario Savio and about stopping the war and free speech, and we were all together. And we were all helping each other. And it was a moment in my life, and I can't let go of it. But we need to create, by the way, we're going to do an event in October you must come to. We're going to do another teachers and farmers and advocates like yourself at the Campanile at UC Berkeley. We did one for the 30th birthday of Chez Panisse there and raised a lot of money and consciousness. So I want to do that in October. So stay tuned.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. I do want to ask you one more question about policy you had mentioned. I think it was last week or the week before. I was in New York City for the Henry Ford conversation. I know you've been front and center in talking with that group of folks. And one of the ideas that's circled during that meeting was like, 30 years ago when you were a nutrition service director and you printed out the regulations, they were 1 inch big.
That's right.
But now they would fill at least 4 4-inch binders. There is no way anyone really knows or can decipher how all those regulations. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, like what would be the place to intervene in the policy sphere?
Well, to be quite frank, we need an enlightened dictatorship. I mean, really around doing this, we need someone to say that we really are poisoning our children. And it's about the earth that this food, I mean, there's lots of movies that are out about this now, and so you can watch them. But that's the essence of the book that I'm coming out with. It's that we can do this and we must do it. And it's delicious and nutritious. And if we just, it's again that fast food indoctrination that we have. More is better, time is money. Everything should be fast, cheap, and easy. And no, things that are really wonderful take time.
So true.
It's getting around you. It's just that.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. It's been an honor talking to you.
And thank you, Alice. Thank you for your extraordinary long-term passion, your vision, and I know you work hard.
But I don't need to be thanked because I love what I do. Yeah. It's not hard to do this. It's one thing that I think is so wrong is that most people have meaningless work in this country. They drive a couple hours to a factory that work all day, vending machine, 2 hours back home. I mean, I couldn't do that if I were paid a fortune. I wouldn't do it. And I love what I do. And I know the farmers that I know love what they do. And when they're connected to a school, it's like they are giving a gift every day of their food to those children. So it's something that has that built into it, that it's meaningful in ways that we can't even imagine. It's being able to take care of a sick child. And it's so gratifying. And it feels so good. Well, lovely to talk to you guys, and come down and visit, please.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see you soon.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yes.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
We'd like to thank you so much for tuning in and listening today, and special thanks to Alice Waters for being our guest. Farm to School was written, directed, and produced by Rick Sherman and Michelle Markiston, with production support from Leanne Locker of Oregon State University. This podcast was made possible by a grant by the United States Department of Agriculture. The content and ideas for Farm to School podcast does not necessarily reflect the opinions of Oregon State University, Oregon Department of Education, and the United States Department of Agriculture. The USDA, Oregon Department of Education, and Oregon State University are equal opportunity providers and employers. Do you want to learn more about Farm to School? Check out other episodes, show notes, contact information, and much more by just searching Farm to School Podcast OSU. And we would love to hear from you. So stop by that website that I just mentioned to say hello or give us an idea for a future podcast. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.